Hey there guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be looking at a practical example of one of my listening tips so you can understand native speakers in no time. If you missed it, there's a video that I recorded before where I explained one of my listening tips of how you can improve your listening comprehension and understand things better. So I'll put one of the cards or links somewhere around here if you're watching this on YouTube. Now what I want to do is actually show you how I use this as a student to improve my own learning. So we're going to be doing this in Spanish because that's one of the languages I'm learning, and I'm at a beginner level at the moment. I do speak Italian at sort of an upper intermediate advanced level, so that does help, but I wanted to show you with one of my weaker languages to show you ones where I don't understand a lot of what they say and I also don't understand a lot of vocabulary. As you can see, on the left we have YouTube and on the right we have Remnote. Remnote is a note-taking application that I use because you can also use it to make flashcards and it's free. So if you're interested in a note-taking application or maybe testing out flashcards or something like that, search on Google, Remnote, it'll come up. I quite like it and I'm just testing it out at the moment. The method, if you missed the other video or you want just a very quick recap, the first thing we need to do is find quality content so that you're able to copy native speakers and how they speak to understand them more clearly and improve your listening comprehension. Then you need to listen to it and really focus on what they actually say so that you can test whether you understand it clearly or not. And then to understand that, we need to check to really notice the differences and to help us understand how we can improve and learn better. And then improve. We want to repeat it. We want to teach our brain, we want to train our brain that these sounds we're hearing match these words that we are learning. And that's it. And then we move on to the next phrase and we just repeat, do the same process. And as we do this, we'll understand more vocabulary, our comprehension will improve, and all of that good stuff. And it's also really important to remember that in English especially, it's very difficult because the language isn't phonetic. The written language and the spoken language aren't always the same. You really want to be making sure that you are doing this kind of thing because you're teaching your brain to recognize how we actually say words in English, whether it's an accent, whether it's because it's part of a conjoined conversation, whether it's, like that sort of flow in the middle of a conversation. You really need to be able to recognize that clearly if you want to have much more advanced conversations and if you also want to be able to watch TV series and films without always having to use subtitles, because I know that's always a nice a nice goal. So to get started with this process then, what we need to do is we need to find quality content. Here we go. To do that, I go to YouTube and I'll search for a particular phrase. I'm going to be doing this in Spanish, so I've actually searched for TED Ed in Spanish because I know this is a channel that has very interesting videos. They're always very short and they always have good quality subtitles. If I was searching for something different, I would also go to the filters and I would filter by subtitles and closed captions. And that will then only show me videos that have good quality subtitles. And then I can go through and pick a video. Now we understand the process and we have a good quality video with accurate subtitles. And remember to double check it here where you can see in the list Spanish, because I'm learning Spanish. For you guys learning English, you want to find English. You don't want this auto-generated one. That one is bad. We don't want that because we need the subtitles to be accurate. What we're going to do now is I'm actually going to do this as a student. So I'm going to listen to the first phrase and then I'm going to try my best to understand what they've said, to compare it against the subtitles, and then practice the listening and then move on and help you understand the process and how I would do this. And if you notice a couple of extra different things around here, this is all part of Language Reactor, which is a Google Chrome add-on up here. And it just gives you some additional features and functions on YouTube and Netflix that I find very useful when I'm studying. It's free, just search for Language Reactor on Google, and I'll do a separate video at some point so I can show you exactly how that works. So let's get into it.
Las abejas son criaturas fascinantes por varias razones. Por su ética.
Okay, so plus something. In this case, I know what it's saying because I understand the meaning. It's basically saying bees are fascinating creatures for different reasons, for many reasons. Understanding the exact words they've said is not always so difficult. So let's listen again and we'll see if I can get any more detail before we check the subtitles.
Las abejas son criaturas fascinantes por varias razones. Por su ética.
Varias razones. And then we want the animal's name, which is
Las abejas son criaturas fascinantes por varias razones. Por su ética.
abejas. I have no idea how to spell it. Even though Spanish is exactly the same, there's also words like this, like when you're studying English. If you don't know how it's spelt, that's okay, because also part of this process, when you're comparing it, you will see how it's written as well. So I like to write it down. I also like to try and say it, but you can choose. You can literally just listen and repeat it. You can listen and just think about it, whatever really works for you. But I think if you're saying it and you're writing it, it's also good practice of producing the language as well. So, can be super helpful. Let's have a look at the subtitles and see how I did. What we want to do is we want to open up the subtitles, which you can do down here. If you see these little dots, you go show transcript. This is a super handy technique not a lot of people know about, and you can then copy and paste. I have my version and the correct version, and I want to go through now and I want to just identify what I got wrong. So, for example, this word isn't spelt correctly. This word also isn't spelt correctly. Fascinantes por varias razones. Okay, so I would just identify these because I think it's important to know how to write them, because when I'm reading I also want to understand them better. Now I want to just listen one more time to reinforce what I heard, which actually I was correct in this case. And then if, for example, it's something that you don't 100% understand, maybe, for example, like in Spanish, my level is quite low, I do like to check the translation just to check that I did understand exactly what it means. Sometimes there's false friends, so I do check it, not to translate it, but just to check that I followed. If you notice, luckily in this case, actually the English and the Spanish are very, very similar. It's not always the case, but that's good. So, for example, abejas is not a word that I've heard before, but from the images I was able to guess they're talking about bees, and so that's also important as well. Even if you don't know the words, often watching a video you can get lots of additional information, so that helps you to make some intelligent guesses. When you're looking at the subtitles, always use your judgment, and if you, for example, if you are a Spanish speaker learning English and you see the Spanish phrases maybe missing something, don't assume that it's wrong. Just think, for example, here they said 4 and 4, so that really makes sense in this context. This one, I literally have no idea. Okay, and I think that's really, this hopefully is a good example. You don't have to always understand it exactly, what they're saying. Some of the phrases can be almost impossible, can be really difficult, but that's okay. If you notice that I've kept going and I've tried to add in what words I can hear, I've left gaps if I'm not exactly sure, and then when I do the checking phase, step 3, that's where I'm really going to notice if I understand it, and maybe it's just a completely new set of vocabulary I don't know yet. So that's really the whole idea, is it's not being disheartened, it's really pushing through and saying, I'm going to try my best, get as many words as I can, and then move on. Again, I'm trying to identify patterns. I put an O here and it's a U. For example, there's somewhere up here I put an A and an E. And these little sounds, these little differences, that's really what you want to be identifying, because that's going to help you when you're focusing in the future to be saying, I think I heard an A, but is it correct? Is it actually an E, or is it an O or a U? And those kind of things, because often you'll notice there'll be certain sounds that you very commonly get mixed up, and you want to be identifying these. Again, thinking it's focusing, really paying attention to why and how we're understanding. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to the very beginning of the video, because I've done this little 10-second chunk, and I'm going to turn off everything, and I'm just going to listen one more time and actually look at my notes and check that I can understand all of these phrases.
Las abejas son criaturas fascinantes por varias razones. Por su ética de trabajo increíble, por el jarabe dulce azucarado que producen y por su compleja estructura social.
And there we go. So now when I listen to that, I can actually hear the phrases, and I actually know what it means. So this last one I haven't translated, but that's something I would just put the translation there just for reference. Again, it's not necessarily important I understand all of the new words, but I always think it's a good idea. As I was doing this, what I would do is I would then just repeat this process, keep working through all the sentences. Once I've done a little chunk, I would go back and listen to like maybe the whole paragraph, maybe 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and that would just reinforce that I can understand it when it's all together. Because sometimes, as you'll notice when you're doing this, if you're listening to individual phrases, occasionally there'll be certain words that are cut off at the end of a sentence or at the beginning, so it's not always easy to get everything together. So I think sometimes going back once you've done this exercise sentence by sentence and looking at it as a complete discussion can be super, super helpful. That's it. That's all you need to do. And when you finish it, you can choose a new video, you can choose a new subject. I would find channels that have decent subtitles. For English speakers, one I would really highly recommend, it's actually the English version of the one we looked at earlier, is TED Ed. The reason is because it's made by TED Talk, so the quality is very, very good. They always have really nice illustrations and animations, and the speakers speak very, very clearly. So that means you can practice lots of difficult vocabulary and interesting subjects, but the accent and the pronunciation is generally pretty clear. And they all tend to have very good quality English audio. So if you look through this list, there's stuff about mummies, about books, about like emotional things. So there's loads of different subjects, and you can always find something interesting to look at. If you search on YouTube, you can filter by subtitles and you can find something that's interesting for you, because remember, it's all about having fun. If you're enjoying watching the videos, you're going to watch the videos more, and so you're going to learn more. And if you use this process, this technique that I've told you about, then you're going to improve your listening and you're going to understand much more clearly, and you'll be understanding native speakers in no time. And there we have it. That's a practical example of how I actually use the technique to improve my listening comprehension, to learn new vocabulary, and to have fun studying while I'm watching videos on YouTube and Netflix or anything like that. Give this technique a go and let me know in the comments how you found it, if you found it useful, or if you have any questions. If you're on YouTube, have a fantastic day, enjoy learning, and if you're on Twitch, let's keep going.